Restricted free agent KAndre Miller re-ups with the New York Rangers. We talk about his new contract. Was it fair for both sides? And what can we expect from KAndre Miller going forward? All this and more on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers.
You're Locked On the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 871 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Schick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And so, KAndre Miller, I think a lot of us probably saw this coming. I suppose there was always the possibility that maybe they would move him in a trade, but I think the smart money was always on the New York Rangers, coming to some kind of an agreement with KAndre Miller, keeping him in the fold for at least another couple of seasons here. And of course, he gets a 2-year deal. He'll be an RFA again in 2 years, but we can cross that bridge when we get to it. KAndre Miller, for the time being, once again, signs a 2-year deal with the New York Rangers worth $3.82 million per season. I was thinking Miller might come in around like $3 million or so. I mean, I feel like overall in free agency, I've been kind of overestimating how much money and how much length a lot of these guys are going to get, whether we're talking about Ranger free agents or free agents from around the league. In this case, I guess I undershot it a little bit. Thought maybe Miller would be around $3 million. The reason for this is I kind of saw Ryan Lindgren, his teammate, as something of a comp for KAndre Miller. Now, obviously, they are two very different defensemen, play two very different styles, but I think in terms of overall effectiveness and just helping the Rangers win, I think they're kind of on par with each other these last couple of seasons. Be that as it may, though, Ryan Lindgren, he has $3 million. That's why I thought that, Miller might get about that. Miller gets a little bit more than that, though. Once again, $3.872 million per season. And I think most Ranger fans are on board for this. There might be a couple that think it's a little bit of an overpayment. And again, even for me, it did come in a little bit higher than I thought that it might. But if this is an overpayment, it is not much of one. Once again, I think most Ranger fans are pretty happy with this move. To just kind of run through KAndre Miller's career stats here real quick, we're going to do that. And then we're going to just talk about what he brings to the table and what to expect from KAndre Miller going forward. So 214 games over the course of these past 3 seasons, the first 3 seasons of his NHL career. 21 goals, 54 assists, so 75 points in 214 games. He is a plus 44, and that's very impressive for any young defenseman in this league. I know plus minus, not exactly a perfect stat, but when somebody's plus 44, for their age 21, age 22, age 23 seasons as a defenseman, and somebody that was just kind of thrown into the fire his rookie season, to me, that's very, very impressive for KAndre Miller, plus 44. He has also averaged 21 minutes and 14 seconds of ice time per night, blocked 277 shots, has dished out 406 hits and 153 takeaways versus 150 giveaways this past season. Pretty much his best across the board. I know he got off to a little bit of a rough start along with Jacob Trouba. That pairing really scuffled in the first quarter of the season or so. Obviously, Trouba was dealing with some injuries at the time, and I think that kind of just brought the pairing down together. But regardless, still ended up being a fantastic season for KAndre Miller. 79 games, career high 9 goals, career high 34 assists, career high, obviously, in points with 43. So Miller, it's easy to not notice this. I mean, it's one of those things, I think I was kind of aware of it, but maybe it didn't sink in as much as it should have. KAndre Miller, despite not getting a ton of time, on the power play, is this past season more than a half point per game defenseman. This is on top of, everything that he does in his own end, somebody that's going to chip in with some offense as well. Another interesting stat here, we were going through his career stats, and I mentioned 75 career points for KAndre Miller. Only 5 of those 75 points have occurred on the power play. He's just not out there that much on the man advantage, and somewhat understandably so. The Rangers over the last couple of years here have had a lot of different options as far as guys they could put on the ice for the power play. That became even more true this past season after they dealt for Tarasenko and Kane. But be that as it may, you see that, KAndre Miller starting to come into his own as an offensive defenseman. And, that's not to take away anything that he does defensively, but the guy can put up some points. And, considering the fact that he's put up that many points and pretty much all of it has been even strength, I'd like to see a little bit more of KAndre Miller on the power play this upcoming season. We'll get to an episode like that in the future. I'll project the opening night roster. We'll go through, who I think should be on the top 2 power play units, the top 2 PKs as well. But yeah, KAndre Miller, the more I think about it and the more I see him coming into his own offensively and being more assertive offensively, the more I'd like to see him get a crack at least on the second power play unit for the Rangers this upcoming season. But like I said, we'll project those units at a different day somewhere down the road here, probably not too far in the future. But, again, with Miller, it's one of those things where I don't think there are too many dissenters when it comes to keeping him around for at least the next couple of seasons here. He's not perfect, but I do think, and I mentioned this in a recent episode, when you look at KAndre Miller, you have to consider him one of the Ranger homegrown success stories. The Rangers over the years, particularly over the past decade or so, mixed results in the first round. They've had some big-time hits. They've had some big-time misses, really mixed results throughout the entire draft. But when you look at KAndre Miller, again, you have to see him, again, not a perfect player, and there have been some hiccups along the way, but for the most part, he's been an excellent defenseman for the Rangers ever since he got, the chance to crack the opening night roster a couple of seasons ago. And one of the, again, homegrown success stories, one of the Ranger first round hits. And if we take a trip back in time to 2018, that's when the Rangers drafted KAndre Miller, first round pick once again, went number 22 overall that season. And that year, the Rangers actually had 3 draft picks in the first round, and Miller head and shoulders above the rest of them because number 9 that year was Vitaly Kravtsov. The less said about that, the better. Long story short, just a complete bust for the Rangers. I mean, at this point, there's no other way to say it. Miller at number 22 has obviously been very good for this team and has become a staple of the Ranger blue line. And Nils Lundkvist was taken at number 28, and the jury's still out on him. It could go either way, as far as what he does for the rest of his career. But obviously, he's no longer here. The Rangers trade him to the Dallas Stars. So the Miller draft pick, I mean, it's a win. Everybody should feel good about this. Everybody should be happy about this. This is a victory for the Ranger organization and Ranger fans. And again, there are some people that kind of nitpick at KAndre Miller. And I will, mention a couple of the things that I think maybe some people are not happy about, KAndre Miller as far as his style of play. I mean, there's really not much, but I will at least acknowledge some of those concerns because there are at least a couple of dissenters. You go on social media, there's a couple of people that, maybe feel like that money could have been spent elsewhere. But, again, I think you start with the cost, $3.8 million per season for KAndre Miller. It is a little bit high. But by that same token, I don't think that the Rangers really this offseason are in a position where they were really looking to spend a whole lot of money elsewhere. I mean, you look at what they did in free agency. Everybody they brought in was at 6 figures and either 1 or 2 years. In most cases, it was 1 year. The only other thing that the Rangers have left to do on their checklist this offseason is to re-sign Alexis Lafreniere, and that'll probably be happening hopefully in the next couple of days here. We will keep our eye on that for sure. But yeah, as far as the money going to other places, I mean, you could always say, hey, trade Barclay Goodrow, trade KAndre Miller. Now you open up a bunch of cap space. You can go get this guy. You can go get that guy. But I don't really see the point in doing that. Again, $3.8 million or $3.872, whatever it is, the exact amount, that to me is very worth it for a player of KAndre Miller's caliber, especially when you factor in his upside, the fact that he is just 23, and the fact that you could probably make a pretty safe bet that his best hockey days are ahead of him. So this could end up being a steal for the Rangers at some point. If there's anything, again, to nitpick in KAndre Miller's game, I guess maybe you could look at there being some inconsistency from time to time. But honestly, I don't think it's anything too egregious. I don't think it's anything that much more than the average young NHL defenseman goes through early in his career, even those that are picked in the first round. I mean, there's always going to be at least some growing pains, some hiccups. And yeah, that's happened to Miller. But to me, those moments have been few and far between. I think for the most part, this guy gives you pretty steady, consistent hockey, or he has done so, throughout the first 3 seasons of his career here. One thing I've mentioned in the past, and I think, maybe Miller critics would point to this as well, is that he doesn't always, he'll hit and he'll play some physical hockey, but there are times where it feels like he's not quite taking advantage of his build as much as he could be. Miller's a beast, man. 6'5", 215 pounds. I mean, this guy, he's out there with Jacob Trouba too. So, I mean, the two of them, they could bring some serious snarl to the rink. We know Jacob Trouba does that on a nightly basis. But there's times where I feel like he could take advantage of his size and his strength just a little bit more than he does. Again, it's nothing too egregious or too much of a concern. There are times, though, where I feel like, an opponent will be basically setting up shop in the goal crease for the Rangers. And there's been times where I feel like Miller can get over there and knock him out of there, at least knock him off balance, do something to make that a little bit more difficult. So, again, that's a little bit of a nitpick. But overall, I love this move for the Rangers. Again, a homegrown success story for this franchise. And once again, back at a price that a little bit higher than I probably would have thought that KAndre Miller would get. But once again, it is not unreasonable when you consider the fact that he's played very well for his first 3 seasons here. He is still just 23 years old, and he's got big time upside. And once again, his best hockey very, very likely ahead of him for KAndre Miller. So we're keep everything rolling in just a second here. I want to talk about, the possibility of the Rangers. Maybe, could they or should they even have tried to sign Miller to a longer term contract? Maybe they did do that and it just didn't work and they just settled for the 2-year deal. We're going to talk about that. We're just going to talk about everything that he brings to the table, and also give KAndre Miller some props for being a very durable defenseman throughout his first 3 seasons in the league. And we're going to do all that in a second, First, we got to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Athletic Greens. I started taking AG1 about 14 months ago, and I absolutely love it. I gave it a try because I wanted to see what all the hype was about, and I wanted a supplement that actually tastes great, and I got all that and much, much more with Athletic Greens. I drink AG1 every morning before I start my day. Just makes me feel awake and alert and ready to take on the day, ready to record the next episode of Locked On New York Rangers. It's just awesome, and it is something that everybody who takes it has in common with all great athletes. They take care of their bodies, and a huge part of that starts with optimizing whole body health. A lot of them also drink AG1, and it's why I'm a huge fan. With every daily serving, I'm setting myself up for success with 75 high-quality ingredients that give me key daily nutrients and support energy, focus, strength, and clarity. It's a micro habit that delivers macro benefits and helps just about everybody take great care of their health every day. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplemental routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/NHL Network. Once again, that is drinkag1.com/NHL Network. Check it out. All right, we just want to go ahead and thank everybody, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And for the everydayers, definitely stick around. Going to be keeping our eye on the Alexis Lafreniere situation. When will he get his new contract? How much will it be for? How long will the contract be? Also got a couple other members of the 2023 Ranger draft class to talk about. And I'm just gonna be looking around the NHL. Also gonna be doing a crossover episode with Locked On Blackhawks to talk about Eric Gustafsson, maybe some Patrick Kane, and some other stuff as well. But for right now, let's go ahead and keep talking about KAndre Miller and this new contract that he has with the Rangers. So one question that came up, at least for me and probably for a lot of you guys as well, I think the smart money, once again, was always on one of these 2-year bridge deals. However, I think, the possibility was at least out there that maybe the Rangers try to lock him up long-term, go for several years. Should they have done this? It's a good question. And in a perfect world, that might have been exactly what they did. You get Miller for a lot of years on what could very easily turn out to be a team-friendly deal. If he continues on the career path that he's currently on, he might, if you sign him for 5 years at like $3.5 million, there's a good to great chance that he's going to be outperforming that, as he continues to get better and better and more acclimated to the NHL. So, again, that is something that was on the table, but again, and this is a theme, it's been a theme on here. It's going to continue to be a theme probably for a lot of years and probably at least another couple of hundred episodes here. That is that the Rangers do have some salary cap issues. And I think it kind of makes some sense for them to tread lightly as far as the length of these contracts. We saw that with their approach to unrestricted free agency. And the next 2 off seasons, there's a decent amount of important New York Ranger players that are either becoming UFAs or RFAs. And just to run through the list real quick here, you've got Lindgren becoming an RFA, Schneider becoming an RFA, Igor will become a UFA, you've got Kakko becoming an RFA, Miller himself in 2 years will become an RFA again. It's a juggling act. And with these contracts and with the salary cap situation, I know the salary cap is expected to go up next season. But, be that as it may, the Rangers do have to tread lightly, I think, right now when it comes to how many years they're giving out for these contracts. Obviously, they've got a lot of star players, most of whom have full no-move clauses that are locked into, lengthy deals with this team. And so, again, I think you just have to be careful with what you're doing here. I don't know that you would have wanted to go longer than 2 years with Miller, partially because, again, Igor Shesterkin is going to be a UFA in 2 years. That contract is not going to be cheap. And you got to make sure you got enough to get that guy under contract, I would imagine. I can't think that there's too many Ranger fans out there that are looking to move on from Igor Shesterkin in a couple of years, one of the obviously elite goalies in this league. And, even though it's not a massive extension for KAndre Miller in terms of the length, I still think it has the chance to pay enormous dividends. KAndre Miller, the sky is the limit. I really do believe he has superstar upside. He has flash superstar ability. I really thought 2 years ago in the playoffs, the run that the Rangers made at the Eastern Conference Final, I thought he might have been the best defenseman on the ice for the Rangers. I say that with nothing but respect for Adam Fox, but KAndre Miller, very, very consistent throughout that playoff run. The whole team was awful in games 3 and 4 against Pittsburgh. You put that aside, and KAndre Miller obviously was a standout during that playoff run for the Rangers. And I would imagine Miller, he'll be back this upcoming season. Probably going to be right back there on the second pairing alongside Jacob Trouba, and you'll roll with Adam Fox and Ryan Lindgren as the top pairing. But KAndre Miller, somebody that would not be out of place at all on a top pairing on just about any league or any team in this league, including the New York Rangers. And I know there have been some Ranger fans, and I'm open to this idea, and maybe Peter Laviolette is open to this idea as well. The idea that maybe you put KAndre Miller with Adam Fox, and you just have this ultra dynamic top pairing. We've seen it every once in a blue moon. The two of them will be out there together, but not with any real kind of consistency. I still kind of like the Fox Lindgren dynamic as well as the Trouba Miller dynamic. I just think, both those pairings, they complement each other very well. And, I think that's probably the way to go coming into this season. But if the Rangers want to try Miller and Fox and then Lindgren and Trouba, I'm not going to argue too much. I mean, again, you have that ultra dynamic top pairing, and then you talk about a nasty second pairing with a lot of snarl, some old school grit to them, Lindgren and Trouba. So that's interesting, and obviously it's nice to have options like this. I think Miller, you're probably at the point with him where you can put him out there with just about anybody, and he's going to do what he does and play some good hockey. But yeah, I mean, we'll see how the Rangers look to set the table this upcoming season as far as, which defenseman is playing with who. Like I said, it is really a lot of fun to have those kinds of options, especially now that KAndre Miller is officially back in the fold for at least the next 2 seasons here. So as far as, everything that he brings to the table, though, again, there's just not a lot of weak points in KAndre Miller's game. He hits, usually has good defensive positioning. Obviously, we talked about this a second ago, has a good rapport with Jacob Trouba. The two of them have clicked pretty much ever since they were put together, ever since KAndre Miller made his NHL debut. Again, the two of them got off to a rough start this past season, but for the most part, they've worked very well together. I think Miller, good speed, especially for a defenseman. Once he gets to full gear, he can move. He'll block shots. He'll kill penalties. Got a great slap shot as well. I like to see him use that more, and maybe he will as the years go by here. Good passer. I think, again, KAndre Miller, when it comes to the offensive side of his game, young defensemen, I think when they first come into the league, there's maybe a little bit of a tendency to sit back a little bit and not get caught in too deep in the offensive zone. You got an odd man rush going the other way. But I think KAndre Miller, we've seen over the years, he's gotten more comfortable going in deep from time to time. And I'd like to see him do more of that. I think KAndre Miller has a lot more to give offensively. And something else about Miller that I like, again, for being very young and, obviously still just 23 years old, he came into this league and he does not back down from anyone. Him and Sidney Crosby pretty much been going back and forth ever since Miller made his NHL debut. Miller will battle him tooth and nail every time the Rangers play the Penguins. That alone, if there are any KAndre Miller dissenters out there, that fact alone should win you over to becoming a fan of KAndre Miller. And I mentioned very briefly, early in the episode, that, KAndre Miller has been a very durable defenseman. To kind of back that up a little bit, his rookie season, that was the year it was coming out of COVID. Every team in the NHL only played 56 games. KAndre Miller played in 53 of those 56 games. In Miller's second season, he played all 82 games plus all 20 playoff games. So Miller went 102 for 102 that season in terms of, games where he took the ice. And then this past year, 79 out of 82 games. And the only 3 games that he missed, of course, were when he was suspended. So, he has not missed a single game, at least not due to injury, in either of the past 2 seasons. And even as a rookie, only missed 3 out of 56 games. That is incredible durability. And obviously, that's something that we hope continues in the future here. Going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I want to go ahead and talk about some of the winners and losers from this deal. I mean, there aren't really too many losers. I think most people are feeling good about this, and I think KAndre Miller, the kind of signing, his teammates will like it, and it should benefit a lot of the guys that he plays with. And we'll get to all that good stuff in just a second. All right, so winners and losers of the KAndre Miller extension. We'll just kind of go back and forth here. We'll start with a winner. I'm just going to go, I mean, it's kind of obvious, but I'm still going to go with KAndre Miller himself. A lot of hard work, a lot of strong play over this last handful of seasons here. And he's obviously been rewarded for that. Quite the jump going from six figures to, $3.8 million per season. And again, he got his shot when he was 21 years old. He was something of a surprise opening night roster member. I think most of the smart money was probably on him starting in the AHL with the Hartford Wolfpack and continuing his development, and then maybe coming up, halfway through the season or whatever it might be. But no, he made the opening night roster, and he basically just took the bull by the horns, has never let go, and has become a fixture on the Ranger blue line. So props to KAndre Miller for making that happen, sticking with the Rangers, again, ever since he was a surprise member of the opening night roster, and has held his own from day one, now puts together 3 consecutive strong seasons, and has been rewarded with a contract that goes for north of $7.5 million over the next 2 seasons. Total, obviously not per season. As far as a loser from this signing, I'm going to say Ryan Lindgren. Now, Lindgren himself would never say that, and he would never feel that way, and he's probably thrilled that his teammate and his fellow blue liner is back on this team. But you kind of look at the lay of the land right now as far as the Ranger defensemen and how much they're making and what it looks like in the coming seasons. So Ryan Lindgren next season will be a restricted free agent with arbitration rights. And I also want to mention that Capo Caco will be a restricted free agent with arbitration rights. That'll make sense in a second why I'm bringing up Caco. But again, you look at everything, the way it shakes out right now, the Ranger depth chart, you go on Cap Friendly, you look at all the different contracts. Those are the only 2 players, Lindgren and Caco, that are RFAs or UFAs next year and that make more than 6 figures. And as we've mentioned, the Rangers are pretty tight up against the salary cap. And I am a little bit worried that Ryan Lindgren, because he's one of my favorite players and somebody that I've called the heart and soul of this Ranger team, I'm worried that there could be a situation after this next season concludes where Ryan Lindgren could find himself as kind of the odd man out. Obviously, you've got Adam Fox and Jacob Trouba. They're not going anywhere. Trouba's got the no move clause. Fox doesn't, but you're not going to trade him. They're both making a ton of money. Trouba's at $8 million per season. Adam Fox is at $9.5 million per season. So they're going to be around. Obviously, you do this deal with KAndre Miller. We know he's going to be here for at least next season. You've also got Braden Schneider as an RFA going into next year. And Schneider will probably, his next contract will be a little bit less than Ryan Lindgren. And again, you look at this cap situation, you look at guys that are going to be RFAs and UFAs next coming season. I am very worried as a Ryan Lindgren fan that there could be a situation here where he could just end up being the odd man out and maybe he's traded next offseason. God, I hate even saying that because, again, I do think he's a critically important part of this Ranger team. But you look at the defense and you've got Fox locked up. You've got Trouba locked up. You've got Miller for at least the next 2 years here. Braden Schneider, you got to think that the Rangers are going to want to keep him around. You've got Zach Jones. He could still come into his own as an NHL defenseman as well. And even if not, you've got Matthew Robertson continuing his development. Seems to be liked by the Ranger organization. So there is this sinking feeling in my gut that Ryan Lindgren could possibly be the odd man out. And I really hope I'm wrong there. And I really hope that they're able to do some kind of a deal with him to keep him as a Ranger for longer than just this upcoming season. But we shall see. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Another winner, I'm going to say Jacob Trouba for all the reasons that I mentioned kind of off and on throughout the entire episode here. Trouba and Miller, again, found instant chemistry from the second they were put together. They seem to complement each other very well. They seem to be very close. They seem to enjoy playing together. I think Jacob Trouba has kind of embraced that big brother role, not just with Miller, but really for all the other young Ranger defensemen. Obviously, they're all getting a little bit older now, and Adam Fox and Ryan Lindgren, guys like that. Clearly, these guys know what they're doing in the NHL. But yeah, Jacob Trouba, when he first came to the Rangers, what was he, like 25 years old, 26 years old? And he was still, basically the elder statesman on the blue line. When Trouba's first year might have also been Mark Stahl's last year. I'd have to look that up to know for sure. But again, Jacob Trouba, right from the get-go, he was one of the, the grizzled veterans of that blue line at the age of like 25, 26. And, Trouba has had a good relationship, I think, with the other blue liners. He was obviously named the captain, and KAndre Miller in particular. It seems like the two of them have really gelled together, really got along. And again, I think their styles of play complement each other very well out there. As far as a loser from this deal, I'm going to say maybe Alexis Lafreniere. I do think, obviously the Rangers and him are going to come to some kind of an agreement here and get him back into the fold. I think you're probably looking at a situation with Lafreniere where he gets kind of a 2-year bridge deal, much in the same way that KAndre Miller just did. But the reason why he's a little bit of a loser is there's just not a lot of money left. The Rangers have less than $3 million in cap space after signing Miller to this deal. So, Lafreniere might have to sign for somewhere around like $2 million per season. And we're living in a world, and I realize Tim Stützle has put up better numbers than Lafreniere thus far in their respective careers, but Stützle was number 3 the same year that Lafreniere was number 1. And if I'm not mistaken, Stützle is getting about $8 million per season from the Senators. Yeah, Alexi Lafreniere is not going to get anywhere near that. So it does kind of hurt Lafreniere in the wallet, where he's not going to be getting as much money because there's just not a lot of cap space left for the Rangers. He's an RFA, and at this point, he's pretty much just going to have to take what he can get. And once again, we will keep our ear to the ground. And whenever Lafreniere, if and when he does sign this extension with the Rangers, certainly we'll discuss that in a future episode of Locked On New York Rangers. Winner, I'm going to say the Rangers in the postseason. Once again, and I mentioned this earlier in today's episode, I really felt like KAndre Miller really came into his own, really showed out during the playoff run that the Rangers had 2 seasons ago, really raised his game. To me, it's somebody, a lot of size, a lot of strength, and he'll continue to use that to his advantage more and more as he goes through his NHL career. KAndre Miller, to me, is somebody that is a Stanley Cup playoff type defenseman. This is the kind of guy that you want on your roster when it comes to playoff time. Not to say that like everybody on your team has to be a giant, but we know how physical the Stanley Cup playoffs can be. I think KAndre Miller is going to be in his element there. And the fact that he's gotten a good amount of experience, 27 playoff games for KAndre Miller in the last 2 seasons, that bodes well for him as well. I think KAndre Miller, again, going to be a big-time playoff performer for the Rangers, and he's going to have to be if they want to get to where they want to go, assuming they make the playoffs this upcoming season, which obviously you got to go out and earn that. But if they do, again, KAndre Miller's going to have a big say as far as how far they go. And once again, I think his style of play, he just, to me, is a playoff style NHL defenseman. As far as winner, I will say fans who won, and I talked about this in the episode earlier as well, but fans who want to see a KAndre Miller, Adam Fox combo on the top pairing. I think that's something that becomes more and more of a possibility. Again, I have no issue with going with Fox and Lindgren and Miller and Trouba, but the Rangers do have a new coaching staff now, and I think people that have been clamoring for that, I just get the feeling sooner or later we're going to see it. Those two might get a little bit of run together, and then you go with, once again, the ultra-dynamic top pairing of Fox and Miller, and then you've got the old-school tough pairing of Lindgren and Trouba. That certainly is a possibility as far as how the Rangers want to line up for this upcoming season. Figure we can pretty much call it there for today. I did want to mention that Derek Stepan's story. So I've been talking about this the last handful of episodes. I've heard back from a couple of you guys. I'm looking for you guys to send in stories about Game 7 of the second round of the 2015 Stanley Cup playoffs. Rangers Capitals goes into overtime. Derek Stepan scores in the overtime period. Everybody goes crazy. Rangers go to the Eastern Conference Final. And I want to hear from you guys what you were doing, who you were with, and how you reacted when Derek Stepan scored that overtime goal. Once again, we did an episode like this with Panarin this past offseason. Going to go back in time a little bit further to Derek Stepan. Would love to hear those experiences from you guys. And then once again, I will share at a future date on an episode of Locked On New York Rangers. Something else that kind of popped up the other day, Barclay Goodrow right now appears to be running or at least making an appearance at a Ranger youth camp. There were a couple pictures going around on social media. And I think at this point, it certainly seems like Barclay Goodrow is going to be on this team next season, pretty much against all odds. I mean, I thought that this offseason he was probably about as good as traded. Not that it was like 100%, but I thought that certainly the odds were in favor of Goodrow being traded. And not that, you want to get rid of Barclay Goodrow, but just that cap hit was a little bit too high, and I thought the Rangers were going to need that money somewhere else. Look, Barclay Goodrow is a good player, and he does a lot of good things for this New York Ranger team. I think $3.64 million, probably a bit high for somebody that plays in the bottom 6 and mostly on the 4th line. Be that as it may, if the Rangers have done everything that they're going to do other than re-signing Lafreniere, and they feel good about this team, and Barclay Goodrow's back, I mean, hey, I'm good with that. Barclay Goodrow, once again, a good player, an effective player, just makes a little bit too much money for somebody that's mostly going to be on the 4th line. I think that's probably fair to say. Ranger free agent watch. Again, Alexi Lafreniere, the only big restricted free agent that remains after this deal with KAndre Miller. No free agents since we last talked have signed anywhere else, or at least as of this recording. We might as well just go through the whole list here. The RFAs that remain are Lafreniere, Lauri Pahuniemi, which is kind of a moot point because he's going back to play overseas, and Brandon Scanlon. And then as far as the UFAs are concerned, you've got Tarasenko, Kane, Mott, Halak, CJ Smith, Libor Hayek, Patrick Kodorenko, and Cooper Zek. So they're all still out there, but honestly, I don't really see much of a way to bring back really anybody that I just mentioned. I mean, I suppose, if you want to re-sign Cooper Zek to a minor league deal at the league minimum, fine. You could probably make that happen. But as far as the big names, it just doesn't seem like there's any cap space to bring back, a Tarasenko or a Kane or a Mott, unless one of them just takes the mother of all discounts, or you make some other move, whether that's trading Barclay Goodrow or doing something else to create some cap space. But I think the smart money is on pretty much everybody I just mentioned, other than Lafreniere walking in free agency. It's at least, the impactful players. Yeah, that'll pretty much do it for today. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.